Hello and welcome to a very, very special power-packed 2-hour session. We're going to be here together for the next 120 minutes, and it's going to be awesome. My name is Roger Hamilton. If you have not met me before, I'm the founder and CEO of Genius Group, and we are going to be here talking about your wealth, your success in the coming decade. So what I'd love to do to just kick it off is to get everyone to please put in the chat where you're from. You can see I've actually posted in there, hi from Warsaw, Poland, which is where I am right now. And behind me, this is not a kind of like one of those background screens. It's a real library, which is where I am right now. And I'm already seeing lots of people sharing in here from all around the world. So I'm going to come and have a read. This is the great thing about the way that we are running this next 2 hours. We're going to make it super interactive. So let's make sure that we're interactive on your side as well. If Michelle and Yvette, you could turn your videos off, that would be awesome as well, because I might bring you on later, but that way people will then see me and the screen. And what I'm gonna do as we go through the next 2 hours is give you all a really clear picture of what you're gonna be learning, what you can expect to get out of this session together, and what actions you have, regardless of whether you're just starting in business, whether you already have a successful company or portfolio, whether you're working in a job, whether you're in between jobs or between businesses, you are somewhere here on this planet with us. I can see Christian here from Melbourne, Australia. I can see Monique from Netherlands. I can see Andrew's from Charlotte, North Carolina. Wow, you're up like early or late. We've got UK South Coast, that's Erica, quite a few from the UK here. Brisbane, Australia, so Elizabeth's here. In the future, I always like speaking to people out in Australia, New Zealand, because you guys are all in the future, and we'll be there soon. We got here Jeffrey from Rustenburg, South Africa. I hope it's beautiful there at the moment. We also have got France, Shabo from France here. And I could go on, Siva from Malaysia, Yvonne from Sweden. Super cool to see you all here right now. I can see some familiar faces and some brand new faces as well. So don't worry, whether you've been here multiple times or it's your first time, you're going to get huge value out of what we're going to share, because we're talking about your personal path towards your success. And let me actually start by sharing my screen here, where I'm going to share some different screens from what I normally share when I kick off a session on Wealth Dynamics, which is something that I created some time ago. I'm going to start with this slide here saying Wealth Dynamics 5.0, because this is a slightly special session we're doing here. This is because we have something going on over the next couple of months, which is called our Entrepreneur Festival. And it's all based on this whole concept of Wealth Dynamics 5.0. If you're wondering why there is a lion here, I am a Leo, just had my birthday in August, but the lion is here for more reasons than that. And before I get into any of the content, I have a question for everyone. When you write your country, that's a pretty obvious, easy thing, right? Because you are wherever you are right now. But I have a different question for you, which isn't where you are, it's when you are. It's like if you were to think back 20 years, right? And 20 years ago was the year 2002. So 2002, a whole different world back then, no social media, like no like smartphones. 2002, where were you in 2002? If you want to just post down, not specifically even just like the country, but like your job, or were you at school, or were you in a different business? What were you doing 20 years ago? Post it in the chat. I'm going to come and look at the chat in a moment and see what some of you were doing 20 years ago, 2002. And if you were to think all the way back to 2002 and just how different the world was right back then, before I come to your comments, let me just share with you where I was, because it's why this next couple of months is very, very special, because exactly in September 2002, this is where I was. This was my book launch in Singapore at the Times bookstore, where I did my very, very first public event ever. As you can see, I have 4 people sitting there as my audience. 3 of those people, by the way, are my children. This here is Luke. Luke at that point, 20 years ago, was only like, what 3 years old. This here is Teresa, who was 5. And this is Kathleen, who was 7. So they were very nice to come along and make up 75% of my audience. My book was called Wink and Grow Rich, which then became Wink. After Think and Grow Rich came and said they want me to change the name of the book. And the whole point of the book is that you don't have to be intellectual to be able to get successful. And it can happen just like that. It can happen in a moment when you have a critical moment, when you suddenly realize that if you actually were to just put yourself in the right place with the right people, then everything just suddenly shifts from that moment on as well, right? So the whole book is about that. And here I was basically just kind of like kicking off, my message to the world. And 20 years later, and by the way, it was exactly in 2002. This picture here, it actually took place in August. And I actually had a bookmark in each of the books where the bookmark actually said, come along for an event. The event was in the third week of September, which is right now, like exactly 20 years ago. And I had a place booked, and I was like, well, what am I going to talk about there? And it was actually in the week beforehand. I was on the beach with my 3 children, and I was thinking, well, you know what? The whole book is about 8 different people that created their wealth in 8 different ways. There's a story about a kid called Richard, who was the same age as my daughter at the time. And the whole question was, is life rich or is life hard, right? Which is the whole concept of Richard. So is life rich? Is life hard? And he starts with life being hard. And then he meets 8 different mentors who create their wealth in a totally different way. And the wealth had nothing to do with money, because I have this saying that wealth isn't how much money you have, it's what you're left with if you lose your money. And so the whole book is about that. It's about all the things I talk about today. It's about worldwide wealth and what we're seeing in the world today as well. And it's about how we get educated through the people we meet and the mentors that guide us on our journey, more than it is about the book itself. And so that book, as it kind of went through, kind of led me to about a week before the actual event. I was sitting on the beach and I was saying, well, why don't I just talk about the 8 people in the book, right? The fact that they actually created wealth in very different ways, which was natural to them. And when I did that, I said, well, there must be some rationale to this. And I just got out a stick and I just basically drew the square and I put the characters on there, and then I gave them all names, and that became Wealth Dynamics. So I actually created Wealth Dynamics exactly 20 years and one month ago, and 1 week, right? So basically 1 week extra. And then I actually did the event, and everyone loved it so much. In fact, there were people at that event who then said, can you come out to New Zealand? Can you come out to the UK? And from there, everything just took off. Within 1 year, I was in about 10 different countries with this message. But it all basically came when I was there on that beach 20 years ago. And of course, as they say, it takes a lifetime to make an overnight success. It was my whole life experience up to that point, taking the hard route, or what I call the cynic route, to success by having to kind of just go through trial and error. And I realized that there are much faster ways to go if you can actually learn from others around you as well. So that was 2002. And I'm sharing that story because, like, here we are 20 years later, and 2022, we just had our IPO on the New York Stock Exchange, with Genius Group being out there supporting all education for all ages, which it was super awesome to see. Now, if you actually happen to have kids, just post in the comments, yes, or even just what age your kids are, to give everyone an idea that we're here not just for our own success, we're here for our family success, we're here for our children's success, we're here for future generation success as well, because you only really truly learn and benefit when you pass it on. We have this whole saying, show up, step up, give back, where the giving back part, which is actually passing this message on to others, is what actually allows us to have the viral effect of the fact that we can go out there and transform the world from where it is today. But it's about us doing this together. So you're going to hear more about my journey as we go through this, but most importantly, this is going to be about your journey and how you move forward in a way that's going to be effective for you, which isn't a one size fits all. It's a personalized path, which is the right path for you. And that's the whole point of what Wealth Dynamics is. By the way, if you think, well, how are my kids doing today? It was actually in August, like I said, I had my birthday, but so did my mother. My mother just turned 80 years old. So we actually had, obviously, an 80s party. And so here we all are. If you don't recognize me, I'm the one with the big afro here. My youngest son is now here. He is now, 23 years old. My middle daughter, Teresa, from Luke to Teresa. Here is Teresa. She's now 25 years old. And here is Kathleen, and she is 27 years old. So you've actually got my entire family here, together with my brother, my sister, my mom, my dad, all of their kids. We basically have just continued to evolve and grow over these last 20 years, as you have as well. And what is so incredible is just seeing the fact that here we are at the beginning of a whole new era. So what is this era? What is this era we are actually going into right now? And so coming back to why is that so important to be thinking about right now, not just what you're going to do next week, but what you're going to do next month or next year, is that if we actually just look at the context of where we are right now, which is that we are basically in the year 2022. There is a reason that we're calling the next 4 months, which starts today, by the way, just so you know, the next 4 months of this year, which takes us up to the end of 2022, is basically our festival getting ready for the Roaring 20s. We're obviously in the Roaring 20s already. And if you're saying, well, what is the Roaring 20s? Like, it's more than just a line roaring. It's about something which is repeating itself at a totally different level. Because the last time we had the Roaring 20s, and it was called the Roaring 20s, was in the 1920s. And in the 1920s, the world was in a very similar place where it was just coming out of a pandemic, which was the Spanish flu, right? It was moving into a totally new high-tech, high-touch golden age. When we talk about high-tech, high-touch, we're not just saying that it's technology that's transforming who we are, and not what's happened in the last 20 years, which is taking us away from reality, when people are on screen time, when people are spending too much time on their laptop. No, this is about the opposite, which is bringing us more into reality, which is the high-touch part. So what happened in the 1920s is, first of all, some of you, you may not know this, but if you go back and speak to your parents or grandparents, they'll tell you, it was the very first time you could actually get televisions in your home. So, and again, they look very different from today, but so people were getting televisions in their home, not just televisions, they were getting phones. This is a picture of the first mobile phone. It's actually basically just a dial-up phone with a wire basically connected to an umbrella, so you could actually hold it, right? And that basically was the first mobile phone. It was when Henry Ford came out with the Model T. So it's the first time people could actually have the technology of a car as well as the technology of a television. It was the first time you actually had speaking movies. So before that, they were all black and white, and they were all basically like silent. And then suddenly you could actually speak, still black and white, but now you could speak, and there was now movie stars. There was like jazz stars. It was the jazz age. It was when the Charleston showed up. The whole Roaring 20s was when everyone just partied like crazy. So if you've been to an airport recently, if you've gone traveling recently, you've noticed just how much there's the same pent-up energy after the pandemic where people are like, let's connect again. But there's now a whole new technology which allows us to connect in a totally different way. This was something predicted by a Japanese, which is called Society 5.0. So as I go into this and I show you the pathways that we designed 20 years ago, it was all preparing for where the world is now going today. So we are now in the 2020s. We're 100 years later, and we are going to experience a greater boom and a greater bust than in any other decade in history. I mean, mark my words, 10 years from now, we'll look back at the collapse of the US dollar. We will look back at the collapse of some of the modern nation states in the West. We'll see a massive rise of what's happening right now in Asia. We will see a total shift to digital currencies, and we'll see it happen within a very short period of time as a result of a number of different dislocations. The assets you own today probably will only be about 5 to 10% of the value of what they are today in real currency. And I'm not talking about real currency being US dollars. I'm talking about real currency being in terms of gold, which has now become a currency. But it's also going to be at a point where that wealth of yours may only be 1% of the actual wealth you hold in 10 years from now. So effectively what we're talking about is the greatest transfer of wealth that we've ever seen of any generation ever. And this is all predictions, which are not just my predictions. They're predictions of the top economists in the world. They're predictions of the top investors in the world. And that's why we're running the summits that are coming up. Our Entrepreneur Summit, our Investor Summit are all about that as well. So which side you are on in terms of the boom and the bust is totally up to you. And we're seeing at the moment these huge shifts that are taking place right now, which aren't just affecting big companies or big governments, they're affecting every single one of us as well. We're going to see greater poverty than we've ever seen before, bigger disruption, but at the same time, we're also going to see bigger successes. And the billionaires and yes, even trillionaires of the future are people that you're not even hearing about today. And there may even be someone who is on this session right now today as well. So I'm going to be sharing later in this 2-hour session, the news about our Entrepreneur Festival, which is coming up, which is called the Roaring 20s. I'm going to be sharing about the high touch connections that we already have planned in places like Bali and Angkor Wat and in London that I know many of you will actually be joining us at. And I'll also be sharing with you the fact that we are now launching what we call Entrepreneur Dynamics 5.0, which is effectively the same concepts of going into flow, but now instead of doing it on small waves, we're doing it on huge waves. And all the people you're seeing here on the Wealth Dynamics Square that each have a different one of 8 different paths of how they create their wealth, have all created their wealth over the last decade. And what we're going to see in the next 10 years is the people that are going to show up on here are going to be, again, very, very different, absolutely different from the ones that were there 20 years ago. I'm also going to be sharing about something called the Genius Certification, which we're now leading out to companies together with our partners. And finally, I'm going to be sharing a little bit about something called our Genius Metaversity, where we are now connecting a digital layer of learning to people all over the world. And we're very excited to share that we've already got over 3 million students all over the world that are part of Genius Group. And we're seeing that number grow by 50% a year. And so we are on target right now for our big goal, which is to get to 100 million students by the year 2030, all within this decade. So this is what we have in store for us. If you are excited about what we are about to share, please post a big yes in the comments. By the way, as we actually go forward, I am also going to be answering questions as well, but I'll tell you when. I can guarantee if you post a question now, there's no way I'm going to see it because it's going to be zooming through here. But great to see all the yeses come up here. And great to see that you're all being interactive with me as well. This is super cool, because otherwise I'd just be here lonely in my little library talking to a screen. So thank you very much for all the love. All right, so with that being shared, let's jump right into it. This here is Wealth Dynamics 5.0. What I'm about to share with you is a full system, which actually allows anybody who is wanting to be entrepreneurial. And we define entrepreneurial not just be someone who's actually starting their own business, but entrepreneurial is someone who is being an entrepreneur from the core root of where the word entrepreneur comes from, which is entreprendre. So entreprendre is a French verb, and entreprendre means to undertake or to go on a quest. So if you feel that your life is a quest or is a journey where you are defining it, you're not just an actor in someone else's book, but you've got your own book, you've got your own chapters, and you're actually writing them as we go, then you're on a quest. That means that you actually are going down this path of entreprendre. Entreprendre has got 2 derivatives from it. One of those derivatives is the past participle, which is called entrepris. Entrepris, which is enterprise, is basically what you get when you start that quest, right? So to be on that enterprise, a little bit like Star Trek, USS Enterprise, to boldly go where no man or woman has ever gone before, that whole aspect of being on an enterprise does not need to be a company. An enterprise can be an organization. It can be a YouTube channel. It can be your website. It can be your family. An enterprise is basically just a ship which you're on and you're sailing off towards your purpose. So that's one thing. The second thing is that from the word entrepreneur, we get the word entrepreneur. And so that is the person who is on the journey. So if you feel that you're on a journey that you get to decide, then the most important thing is that you're showing up at every moment, just like a football player is not the same as the spectator. Spectator doesn't think they even have a chance to kick the ball. Whereas the football player is the one who goes, hey, I'm actually looking out for the ball because I know my job is to kick it. And if you're coming into life in that place where you're not a spectator, but you're actually a participant, then the real key thing you should be doing right now is not just spectating when you're watching me right now. Spectating means you're sitting back, you're probably having a coffee, you're probably kind of just like, enjoying like some of the things I'm sharing and basically like, typing once in a while. But the difference of a spectator compared to a participant is a participant is actually writing down the key things I'm saying that you want to pass on to somebody else, right? Not just to yourself, not just notes to yourself, but you're writing it because it's for your team, it's for someone in your family, it's for a conversation over dinner tonight about something that you learned here. And the most important thing isn't to be thinking about every single thing I say, is to be actually saying, well, what are the top 5 or 6 things that I'm going to take away from this next hour and a half, which is actually going to be something I can apply, and what's something I can do which is going to make it worth my time. So ask yourself that. If you were to take just these next 2 hours and say, what is it worth to you? Is this 2 hours worth $100 to you, $1,000, $10,000, whatever that number is? Write that number down, or type it if you're typing on your phone or on your computer. Write that number down and say, right, is there a way for me to actually be able to achieve this number from the things I'm learning by just applying something from here into my business? I'll come back to that later, right? And in fact, later on, I might even ask you to stretch that number. But for now, at least you've got a number that you're thinking about. And every time you write something down, if you wrote the number $1,000, ask yourself, is this a $1,000 action, right? Or is this a $10,000 connection? Whatever it is that comes out of this for you. And with that, let's just stretch ourselves a little bit already. And what I'd like to do is to ask you a different question. And that question is going to be linked to the fact that we're all at different levels right now. This is something called the Entrepreneur Dynamic System, where Wealth Dynamics is one part of this system. But there is also the levels I'm going to touch on first. Then there's the profiles. And then it's basically into how you then use this in a way that can change you as an individual, which is the whole idea of Entrepreneur 5.0. You as a team, which is the idea of Leadership 5.0. And you might be already in a big team where you're thinking you're going to pass this on to others. or all of society, which means within your country, within the world as a whole, within your industry, you're going to have an influence beyond just the people who know you to people who don't even know you yet. All of this is all about how do we create a legacy. And this is a system that's been built, as you've heard, over 20 years, and now it's being used by 3 million people all around the world. And it really starts basically not 20 years ago, but even further back. So I want to take you back 30 years now. And for those of you game, think back 30 years, right? Those have a good enough memory. And if you're younger than 30, that's okay. You can excuse yourself from this exercise. But if you are basically remembering the year, not 2002, but 1992. All right, 1992. What was your job? What was your business? What were you doing? Just write down whatever that is into the comments. So you get an idea, like picture yourself in that moment, right? Remember, those are the moments, there was no mobile phones at all, not even smartphones, just no mobile phones, right? Like no flat screen TVs, right? Everyone is still using those kind of bulb TVs, right? Definitely no internet, like 992, like, no one on this call would have been using the internet at that time. I remember mail, remember like phone boxes, like what a time, right? 30 years ago, right? So basically, let me share with you what I was doing 30 years ago. Here we go. All right, so 30 years ago, this is very relevant because after this 30 years, I'm going to be thinking about basically not just next decade, but next 30 years and how much is going to change. I showed you my kids before, right? That this is where when I actually took them to Hamilton Palace, which is I'm Hamilton, Roger Hamilton. So basically, my dad's Scottish, and so I was like trying to show them a bit of the heritage. We found that the Hamilton Palace actually had been torn down and had been replaced by a Tesco's car park. Tesco's is a supermarket chain in England. So I was like, okay, so everything pretty much disappears. And that's when you realize that physical things disappear, right? Like even big monuments, like they do fall down, but legacies don't, right? There's stories about people from the past that we hear about today, and they're as pristine today as they were back then. And so we're actually saying, wow, you know what? We can actually have a story in our life that can also extend way, way, way beyond the 100 years that any physical thing might be around for. And that's not going to be true for your business, right? Like there's very few businesses that go over 100 years. But your legacy of what you actually are standing here for, that's super important, right? Because it's a sobering fact, but every single one of us who are investing time in this call right now, we're most likely not going to be around in 100 years' time, which means what we do right now is super important for how we're going to be remembered for the future as well. Right? And I think that's a really, really important thought just to be taking. That might be one of your $1,000 thoughts, because you're going to realize, geez, the money actually follows those that are driven by purpose, right? We're seeing this all around the world right now. But money wants to find a home, and it wants to find a home with those that are meaningful and those that are making the biggest difference. So seeing where we were and sharing the fact that, hey, things are a little bit different. There I was in Scotland, a bit sad that Hamilton Palace had been knocked down until I walked into the hotel, which is right next to Glasgow Airport. It's called Holiday Inn, and there's a walkway, which is what I'm standing on right now on this picture, which actually it takes you from Holiday Inn into the airport. And I come across this map, and the reason I'm so excited by it is because you can see down here on the right, it says Cityscape, right? Cityscape Maps. This was my first company. This was the company I started 30 years ago when I was at university. And as you can see, it's basically all drawn by hand. This was blown up, and I actually sold the company. So this is the people that bought the company over, and obviously they've kind of sponsored Holiday Inn, sponsored it, and they've got this out there. You can see all the shops are on here as well. So we used to walk around the streets and get everyone to advertise on here. And it actually started in my first full year as a Cambridge architecture student, where here I am basically selling my drawings on the street. I didn't know at this time that this girl who came down and sit next to me, she ended up becoming my wife, Renata. And as a result of her, I had my 3 children. But talk about critical moments, right? But here I am, and I'm basically there, doing my drawings and making a little bit of money so I can go on a holiday. And then from there, it then turned into the map company, which then grew to 40 cities all over the UK. But then what happened off the back of that was it was in 1992. This was like 1989, right? So by the time we got to 1992, I had just graduated. I had gone down to London, and I still remember what happened when I got down to London, because I was with my business partner, Mike Ross, and the two of us were walking down into one of the London Undergrounds, the Tube. And down there, we saw they had put up an electronic kiosk, and you could go to the electronic kiosk and tap in where you wanted to go, and it had an electronic map which was linked to something at that point, which was, we didn't know what it was called, but it turned out that was the internet, where it actually linked to other kiosks as well. And of course, no one had mobile phones, so you had to go to the kiosk to find out where you were. And what I saw from that was like, oh my gosh, my paper business is going to be out of business. So because it's going to be out of business, I better get out of this first. And so what I did was I said, all right, I'm going to sell my business, which I did, not really for much money. And then I had to go out looking for what the next thing was going to do, that I was going to be part of. And that's okay. I mean, at least I didn't crash with the business, right? But at that same time, when I basically gave up on my dream of having these maps all over the world, there was someone else who was 3 years younger than me, and he had a map business just like mine. And he was doing a very similar thing, going around to different shops and so on, and kind of like, creating this map. And he saw the same thing, which was that there was all of these kind of like, maps online. But instead of him saying, okay, this is all going to be taken over and I'm going to be out of business, he said, well, if someone's going to disrupt my business, why don't I just disrupt it myself? And so what he did was he then decided that he was going to set up a new business. And this is in America, right? So in America, you have this idea of zip codes, right? So if you're American, you know this, right? Like you've got like postal codes in other places, all right? So basically he said, okay, the real world, right, is zip 1, right? That's zip 1. But you have a different location, which is on the internet, which is zip 2. And so he created a company called Zip 2. And he basically then just took all of the people and all the things he was doing with the maps on the real world, and he put it into the online world. And then as the internet started to grow, after only about a year of the internet growing, he sold his business, 3 years younger than me. And he sold his business when he was still basically just like 2020 for $300 million to Compaq, right? Now, if you don't know who Compaq is a computer company that's no longer around, but they bought it for $300 million. And yeah, I'll show you a picture of him. Some of you may be familiar with who he is because what he did with that 300 million. So here basically is the picture. Let me just give it to you here. And this is the guy, Elon Musk. So here's Elon Musk, right? When he was running Zip2. So he took the 300 million. He says, I'm going to go like do more stuff. He put it into a company called X.com, which was in the same building as another company called PayPal. This is Peter Thiel on the left, who set up PayPal. Is Elon Musk on the right, with less hair than he has now. And he basically decided that he'd work together with PayPal. So they joined up together. They then sold PayPal for like $1 billion plus to eBay. He took that money, he put it into SpaceX, into Tesla, into Solar City, and you know the rest of the story. He's now the richest man in the world. What is so interesting about that is I'm not bitter. Obviously, he's done a lot more right than just basically not sell his map company. But the fact that he has a mindset which is constantly not saying I'm going to be left behind or I need to stop what I'm doing because someone else is going to take over, which was my mindset when I was younger. But our mindset, which is like, well, if there's a future coming, I might as well just be part of that future, right? Meaning that he's always in startup mode. He's always thinking, well, what could I be starting today that actually could just disrupt what I was doing yesterday? And he's never precious about the things he's had. So if you're precious about your business right now, if you think that you being on this call has everything to do with how you can improve your current business, you might be missing the point that it's actually the new thing you're about to start or the new venture or product you're about to introduce, which might actually disrupt everything you're doing so far. And if there's anything that you're looking at in the world where you're going, you know what? Like, I would love to be in that space right now. Oh, those guys that are setting up that blockchain business. Oh, those people over there who are working out smart ways to use green energy. Oh, those people over there who figured out really super smart food tech. Whatever it is that you're looking at and almost getting jealous or a little bit kind of like, you know, wishful that you were in that market, but you just hadn't started there. You can start that today. It is easier and faster to get into something new and connect with the right people today than ever before. And we have got more growth areas in the world today than ever before, despite the fact that there are so many big companies that are now crashing. And this is the nature of the roaring 20s and where we are today as well. So I'm sharing this story just to share with you that I've been going through my own learning. And it was through a lot of these missteps and learning from others that allowed me to have an IPO on the New York Stock Exchange with our company. But in your case, it's going to be exactly the same. It's going to be those decisions that get made and when they get made, which makes all the difference. By the way, just so you all know, we didn't actually make the conscious decision to IPO on New York Stock Exchange until April 2000, which was just 2 years ago and 1 month into the pandemic. when we made that decision. So like anything can happen at any point, which can then shift and change your thinking and the results that you get off the back of it as well. So with all that being shared, why is this important for where we're going now? Because what Elon Musk did was something which is no longer just luck, where he just happened to be in the right place, right time. He repeated it again and again and again. And the model that he used is the same model that many other people that he worked with also learned, and they went out and built billion-dollar businesses as well, which is why you have this whole concept of the PayPal Mafia, a whole group that basically went out and between them created $11 billion businesses. That includes Peter Thiel with Palantir, includes Prima Shah with Kiva, which is the biggest micro-lending company in the world, includes Steve Chen and Chad Hurley, who built a $1 billion business in YouTube within 1 year and then sold it to Google. Like the speed with which you can actually make a difference to be able to shift is now greater than ever. This was not always the case. If you take something like flying, this is the Wright brothers and the first flight of the Wright brothers. And this actually took place in the 1800s. And it was a full 50 years later. It wasn't until 1930 that the FAA was even established as basically a way to regulate flight. And it was 50 years before there was even a flight school to have a pilot have a flight school. So we are living in a world today where, on the one hand, like I said, it is right now easier than ever to be able to grow a business by getting connected to the right people. But it's the hardest thing ever to actually get going, because you've got to do some basic learning to start with, in the same way that before you could surf on a wave where that wave basically was small and you can just paddle and get onto it. Whereas today the waves are so big and they're moving so fast, you need to have basically a jet ski that's going to tow you in. In the same way that, like, in the early days, you could just get on a plane and make it yourself and then just take off and crash, which is what most people did. And then now, if you want to actually be a pilot, you just can't do that. You have to go out there and actually train to be a pilot as well. So I think there will be a time when you actually need to get certified to be an entrepreneur, right? Because we've gone through 50 years of entrepreneurship where anyone can just start a business, but like, the failure rates, right? Like it's over 90%, within 5 years, over 90% of all businesses just crash, because the pilots that are saying, I'm an entrepreneur or I can run a business, never learned what they needed to do to run the business, right? Whereas now there's actually specific things that you actually need to learn in order to be good as an entrepreneur. I mean, as a parent, I don't know if you agree, but I also think you should probably have a license to be a parent as well, right? Because there's so much complexity today to mental issues, to physical issues, to thinking differently about generations and how we become custodians of the next generation, that are all fundamental to basically like just having the basics of being a leader and understanding what that is. I will guarantee that today, almost all of your challenges within your business are not challenges of the market. This is not the market's fault if your business isn't where you want it to be. Your earnings are not as a factor of the currency system, because there's more money awash than ever before, right? The real issue is the level to which you're actually attracting the things that actually make sense to you in a way that you are then getting your wealth, and at the same time being able to deliver your worth as well. And here's the biggest killer of all. And whenever I say this, there's always some people that are a bit uncomfortable. But if you think this is actually true, I'd love you to just type the word true in once I say this. Every single one of us is the sum of all the choices we've made, which means that you are exactly where you're meant to be based on your choices. Even if you don't like your choices, you are there because of the choices, right? And if I was to ask you that question, which is like, okay, so like, why are you earning what you're earning? Like, who decided on that? Like, oh, it's because my business can't make enough money. I can't pay myself more, right? Well, who decided on your business? Right? And if I go all the way back, you'll find that all those decisions that were made, you're not the victim of your circumstance. You're the one that chose all these things. And if you believe that, just write the word true, right? Because this is the key, right? Like, as long as you think it's out of your control, you're not even going to try and change. But the moment you realize, oh my gosh, it's actually me that's choosing these things, maybe unconsciously, but I'm still choosing them, then that means that I can actually now consciously be choosing the right things for me going forward as well, right? And so this is a really important point of where we're at right now, is that what you get out of our session here is not what I say, it's about what you choose and what you act on that comes off what I say as well. So with that being said, I have given enough of a preamble. We're already half an hour in, and I'm now going to go into the technicals of what we're actually going to be doing, where effectively we are talking about having a flight school, right? And we're going to be going through, if we actually take Entrepreneur Dynamics as a flight school for entrepreneurs, it is about knowing that there is a step-by-step that you need to learn in order to get to higher and higher complexity on the things that you can then fly. And today, you do not want to be creating your business as a bicycle. You want to create it as an airplane, or even more a rocket ship, because that's what's going to really take off and get you somewhere. So my journey is, as I mentioned before, it's been like a 30-year journey. In the last 20 years, it was 10 years ago that I met up with Bill Clinton, got connected up with some of the top entrepreneurs in the world. It's where I actually got to meet Larry Page and also Chad and Steve Chen, who basically started up YouTube. Saw them basically like get sold to Google in that year when I actually met up with them. Met up with Richard Branson, spent time in Necker Island, and all of this actually then led to the steps that I then took to take our company to a public company. And now we're on the trajectory that we are as we grow as well. But every day I am mentoring companies that were at startup stage, just like I was, and we're constantly starting up new areas as we're going as well. But we're now doing it in a new society, and this is called Society 5.0. This is where the concept of Entrepreneur Dynamics 5.0 and Wealth Dynamics 5.0 comes from. And this is where the Japanese said a few years ago, before the pandemic, that a new society is coming, which they're calling the Imagination Society. This society comes as a result of technology evolving into step changes as it goes. So for example, Society 1.0 was when we had our best technology was hunting tools. And so we all got ourselves into social groups called tribes. And they were nomadic tribes, right? Because we had to go traveling with our hunting tools in groups to be able to actually hunt for our food. But as soon as those tools became farming tools, we moved from nomadic tribes to villages, because now we actually found that we could actually all live in one place, and it made more sense to do that, to actually farm. And so as a result, we had the Agrarian Society, Society 2.0. The moment that we said, hey, you know what? Like, we've got new tools that actually allow us to actually be in factories and actually to manufacture things, that it made more sense to be in cities than it did to be in villages. And that was Society 3.0, the Industrial Society. And over the last 20 years, we've been all living in Society 4.0, which is the Information Society, where we said, hey, we've got tools like mobile phones and connected laptops, and we can actually be global all around the world. But this is not the end of it, right? Because that took us into high tech without the high touch. We're now saying, well, actually, we've got tools which are sensors and AI and data that follows us around, and we can use that to enhance our experience of the reality instead of distract ourselves from it. So let's actually focus more at being good humans. And this is what we are now going to be seeing going forward, where all of the societies are going to be a mix of robots and AI and technology, and where we can just get on with actually doing a better job in the world of our humanity. And so with this basically leads into what, as TechCrunch said, is a whole new Entrepreneur 5.0. Like, this is the entrepreneur blueprint for the future. And we have been building this blueprint over the last 20 years. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take the next 20 minutes and just guide you through what we call the wealth spectrum, which is your level of consciousness, which is at one of these different levels, from infrared victim to ultraviolet legend. See if you can actually see which one of these is right for you. If you already have done the wealth spectrum test, because it's a free test, right? And the team will drop in the link. So if you haven't, you can even do it while I'm talking right now, right? And so it gives you something interactive that you can be doing. But for everybody who has done it, just type down whatever your current level is, right? Are you at red level? Are you at yellow level? So people can start spotting, going, oh, these are different people, different levels, right? And actually, as you're going through this, you can really think through why it is that people choose to be at a level, because it is a choice as well, believe it or not, even if you don't think you are choosing to be there. And also how we need to shift to get to another level as well. Remember what Einstein says, you can't solve a problem at the same level of consciousness that created it. So a really important thing here is to realize that all the problems you're experiencing in life come with that level, and they will always be at that level. Have you noticed sometimes you have a problem, you keep on trying to solve it, and it just shows up in a different form? But until, like, if you're wet, it's because you're, at the level of actually being like in the sea or in the river, and you're always going to be wet no matter how much you try and dry yourself, until you just basically get out. Or, if you're thirsty and you're in the desert, you're just fundamentally in a place which is actually then with it coming inherently with benefits and also with challenges as well. So the real key thing is, how do you change location, not how do you change mindset? Because mindset itself has got different locations, in the same way that a radio station, right, has got different channels. And as long as you're on the rock channel, don't keep praying for pop music to come up, because it's not going to come up, right? It's always going to be the rock music. So the real key thing is, how do you tune into the right level, which is the right level for you? That's what consciousness is all about. And most of us, we're at the wrong level right now to enable us to move up. Our winning formula needs to actually shift and become a losing formula. Just like if I'm on like the third gear in a car, if I keep on burning out, that's never going to change until I find my fourth gear, right? So basically, if we go through and say, well, how do I actually know which level I'm at? I'm just going to walk through them like express chain, go through them so you get an idea of it. And you be able to say, this is the one I'm at right away. And I'll pause for a moment for just a few questions if there are any as well, before I go on to the next stage, because after I've gone through this, I'm going to show you which corner of the actual lighthouse, because we do call this a lighthouse. It's all about getting to the light, and which corner of the lighthouse you currently are on in your pathway, which is what we call the Wealth Dynamics platform, right? But there's no point starting with Wealth Dynamics without realizing it's in the context of a floor plan to basically a three-dimensional lighthouse, which has got different people at different levels. Foundation Prism is the first 3 levels. This is where you master your personal flow in life, right? That's the cash flow, that's the connections flow, that's the resource flow flowing through you, where even if you leave your job or leave your business, it goes with you, right? As I said earlier, wealth isn't how much money you have, it's what you're left with if you lose your money. The second prism, the enterprise prism, is the flow of all the money on the planet. We're now up to $18 trillion every single day changing hands, right? And it's changing hands basically through businesses, through investments, and understanding and mastering this prism is essential, but only if you've already mastered the foundation prism. Otherwise, it's like, turning on the tap when the plug is out. No matter how much money comes in, it's all just going to disappear anyway. And then the final prism, the alchemy prism, is a newer prism that's opened up more recently, because the alchemy prism used to be the domain of monarchies. It used to be the domain of governments. It effectively is how you actually even create the music in the first place. But we're now seeing entrepreneurs that are taking a global view that are actually being more effective than even countries at solving global problems. In fact, countries can't solve global problems because countries, by definition, are run by governments whose focus is not on the globe, it's on their own country. So it's only us as entrepreneurs or leaders that can actually transcend countries and be thinking as a global citizen. So there are a total of 9 different levels, from infrared through red and every color of the rainbow up to ultraviolet. By the way, if we start at the basement, which is infrared level, you can see number 1 on the lighthouse is actually below ground level, right? This is someone that has no windows, it's dark, it's raining, the water's coming in. It's like, you don't want to, not only do you not want to, you cannot stay here forever because you're going to go bankrupt, right? So what is infrared level? Regardless of whether you have a big business or you're in a job, infrared level is when every month you go deeper and deeper in debt. You're effectively in negative cash flow. A large part of our current system is in negative cash flow. When you're in a government which is printing money and everyone's just getting into more and more debt, including the one printing the money, the government's getting into more debt, right? Then you get into this infrared area where everyone's the victim, everyone's blaming everyone else. Now, have you noticed that? Like if you turn on the media, everyone's blaming everyone else for everything, right? So we have got an infrared media right now. And if you basically are feeling this, you're spending every day actually getting more cross and annoyed at people around you than you are at yourself, right? You're not even trying to change yourself because you don't think it's your fault. You're the victim, right? It's other people's fault. So as long as you're stuck here, you'll stay in negative, and whatever you invest in will also go negative. I have so many stories of in my early days when I was negative, and I deliberately designed it to be negative because I was so guilty about paying myself more that I wouldn't even get paid from the company. Guaranteed, if you're at this level here, then you are actually at a point where it's not just negative personal cash flow, it's negative self-worth. Like it's you yourself that is in more need of others' approval or of others' interest in you than they are of you, right? And so it actually is a really, really damaging place to be in, but you get a benefit of this as well, as it says, right? And the benefit is anonymity. You don't have to take any responsibility for anything. Most likely, if you see someone when you're trying to be successful, starting to hate on you or say bad things about you or have an opinion about you, often they won't even want to tell you who they are. They'll just post it on your YouTube channel or on your Instagram feed, and you'll be going, who is this person, right? Or they'll use a pseudonym, right? And why is this? Well, because they don't want them to be in that place themselves. And they actually feel, well, if I was more successful, well, then I'm going to have all these responsibilities and I'm going to have all these haters. I don't want that either. So we're living in a world at the moment where everyone is avoiding that responsibility. And it's time for you and I to change that, right? Because as long as that's happening, it's affecting the people themselves that are in this place. And it's actually very easy if you're wanting to be an entrepreneur to get in this place, because no one's paying you a salary, which means you've got to actually get beyond your own self-worth to pay yourself more, right? So there's a whole way to do that. The good news is you can get out of this within a matter of months, if not weeks, by taking the right steps, but it's getting real as to where you're at. as opposed to saying, hey, I'm going to go and invest a whole bunch of money in crypto or a whole bunch of money in property, and then realize that you're just going to end up in even more trouble, right? Because if you start multiplying negative, you just get more negative. So where should you go if you're at this negative level? Where you should go is not to just try and go out and be a millionaire tomorrow by buying a lottery ticket, right? Where you should go is actually saying, let me just get to level 2, which is red level. Red level is having just enough money to have nothing, right? It's like, okay, at least every month I'm paying my time, right? So if you're at this level here, where you're like, okay, at least I'm no different. You know that you're at this level because when you look at your bank account, it's pretty much the same bank account on a week by week, month by month basis. In fact, some of you will be going, oh, geez, like 5 years ago, I pretty much had the same as I have now, even though I've been earning more. So this is the red level, right? This is someone who basically is at survivor mode. It means you're not drowning, but it also means you're not swimming. You're just treading water. And if you're at this point, what most people are trying to do is basically hit a home run, like I'm just going to go be successful. It isn't going to happen at red level because you're still at level where you're spending more time and energy just basically staying above water than doing anything else. And so what's really important at this point is to realize there's a way to actually not just tread water, but get to shore where you can build a ship, because you want to build a ship. You want to go somewhere or get on someone else's ship. It's one of those two different ways. But if you're at that level here, this is the biggest challenge that you're actually facing. This is a little bit like some people say, I'm just going to go follow my passion. This is not the time to follow passion, right? Like you're saying, really? But I think passion is important. Passion is important, but passion is overindulgence in the thing that you love. And you're not going to get paid for what you love. You're going to get paid for what other people love, which means it's about how you actually connect the two pieces together, right? And so the most important thing here is to say, okay, how do I actually buy myself time so I have enough positive that I can now move forward, right? Which is the third level. It's a little bit like Superman, right? Like Superman still has Clark Kent time, right? It's like Superman doesn't go out and save the world and then ask the granny he just saved to pay him, right? Like, no, Superman's got to basically get dressed up in his suit, right? Go to the Daily Bugle or whatever the newspaper was he went to, earn enough salary that he can then afford his cape and stretchy pants, and then off he can go and save the world, right? Maybe he's going to do that for 3 days a week, right? Make sure at least it's positive. And then he was taking the other 2 days a week to then go start his new business. But the point here is that you can be both Clark Kent and Superman at the same time, or Superwoman, right? At the same time. The most important thing is to know that this takes discipline before passion, but then you then add passion on top of discipline. So there's a specific way to do it. Again, the rules of the game are different from infrared to red in order to get from red to orange. In each of these cases, we've got a step-by-step. We have basically the micro school, and we have something which is our GEM membership, which is all part of this. I'm going to give you all an action, by the way, at the end of this call on exactly what you can do next to ensure that you're actually actioning this, right? So just be thinking about this. Does this make sense to you? And you want to actually know what those actions are, because when we get to that, we'll see as well. Let me go to the third part of Foundation Prism, which is what we call the worker. So the worker is the person who's just working hard to earn a living, right? That means that they're positive cash flow now. Don't know how to start a business, dependent on others because they're the ones that are paying you and you're the one working. It feels like hard work, right? You're having to work hard to earn a living. And we all have to go through this before we earn the right to even have a business. But if you're at this point, or at least you're positive cash flow, you're ready for the next level of the prism, right? So I would often work with an entrepreneur who goes, my team is my problem. My product, my market is my problem. And I'll look at them and they're in Foundation Prism and go, no, you're the problem. Right? Let's solve that first, because your entire business and life is simply a reflection of yourself, right? So if you start with yourself, that whole kind of concept, which is actually engraved at basically the top of the doors of the Delphi temple, right? And a temple of Delphi was effectively Hercules's, a beginning and end in terms of self-realization or self-awareness. And it said, know thyself. So you've got to start by learning about yourself before you're learning about anything else. That's what we do in our education system as well. So now you know your purpose, now you know your promise, now you know why you're doing what you're doing. Now it's time to start the business. And if you're at that point, then you may be at yellow level right now. Yellow level is the player. This is like the guitar player. If you're like, hey, I know how to make an extra $10,000. I can go out and I can just do that, right? It's like, if I just go put this product together, it's not even about my time anymore. I don't have to get paid for my time like Foundation Prism. I'm actually getting paid for my packaged value. I'm turning the value into products, into teams, and they're going out and providing those services, right? And then I can just charge for all of that. So that all sounds great, but just like any guitar player, the problem is if you stop playing, the music stops. So if you design your business as a yellow level player, and when we get onto the Wealth Dynamics Square, maybe you're a star profile, maybe you're a creator profile. But if you're at that point and you're at yellow level, this is basically coming from one of the chakras. By the way, if you don't know the history as to how it is that these colors of the rainbow showed up, they all showed up for the first time in a book called Optics. Optics was written by one of my alma maters at Trinity College, Cambridge. His name was Isaac Newton, and he wrote Optics before he wrote Principia, which is like what he's most famous for with his rules of physics or laws of physics. But with Optics, what he did was he was the first to actually like basically take light and turn it into a rainbow through a prism, right? So he was experimenting with light. And because he also was very much into Eastern mysticism, he understood the chakra levels. So he's the one who decided that rainbows had 7 colors, right? Which is from red to violet. And again, obviously, that's all part of the entire spectrum, which takes you right down to infrared, which you can't see, or ultraviolet that you can't see as well. So there's a total of 9 different areas there. And so he's the one that created these, but he created them around the chakra colors. And yellow is willpower, right? So yellow, willpower, just before heart, which is love. Right. And so willpower is about I will do things, right? Green level is I will help other people do things, right? So if you're asking the question, how do I make money? You're going to be at yellow level. If you're asking, how do I help other people make money? And I'll just keep a cut, right? You're thinking green level, right? So other people are working for you, right? So it's very, very, if you're thinking blue level, it's like how my assets making money. That's also very different. So understanding these are different levels. Or another way of looking at it is this is also designed by Stephen Covey, where he talks about, foundation level is dependence, right? Depending on other people for your cash. Whereas yellow level is independence, right? It's basically like you're the one making it all happen. Whereas green level is interdependence, which means that it's actually making everyone else making it all happen. But you have to earn the right because no one at the performer level, which is green level, wants a player that doesn't already know how to play. But if you're the guitar player playing, what happens when you stop? The music stops. It's like riding a bike. If you stop, it's going to stop at some point. And so the problem with that is you got to keep on showing up for your business, and no one can do it as well as you because you're independent. You're taking all the independence for yourself. And so other people aren't going to come work for you because they think you've got it handled already. You're Captain Underpants. You're going to solve everything. So if you're at that level right now, it's like, oh, that's true. Like, how do I get to that next level where I can actually do the opposite, which is not one person doing all things, but it's all people doing one thing? Right? How do I do it so that basically it's about me not trying to actually play all the music, but everyone playing? How do I become the drummer at the back, creating the rhythm so other people can play the guitar, right? And so I can even step off for a moment, another drummer can come on, right? That basically what it is to work on your business instead of in your business. And there's very specific things which are the opposite. Your winning formula, which is I've got this handled or I've got a to-do list, becomes a losing formula. And you've got to swap, I've got this handled, which is they've got this handled, right? You've got to swap, I've got a to-do list, which is the opposite. I've got a not to-do list, right? All the things you say no to is actually what's going to allow you to move forward. Or I've got a who's doing what list where other people have got their name against what I think is important, not me. And that's the only way to actually lift up. And there's very specific steps you need to take to do that. But that's when you can get into the millions, right? Because the millions are going to flow through multiple people as opposed to just through you. And that is where most people get stuck at yellow level. They burn out, right? They can't go further instead of just changing gear. And then from there, seeing things differently. And by the way, the biggest trap, which I see many people that I mentor, they come through this process and then they're like, okay, I got it, Roger. You got what? I'm at green level. I don't think you are. Yes, I am. Well, how can you tell? Because I've got all these people working for me. It's like, nope, you're worrying about the business even more now than you were before. It's like, that's actually true. It's like, right, exactly, because it's still all about you. I call that the yellow octopus, right? Because it appears like it's green because you've still got all these people. But it's like they're actually not people, they're tentacles, because you're still the one directing them, telling them what to do, right? They're not coming to you to tell them what they're doing. And so that basically is like many, many tentacles, right? And a small brain, and everything sucks, right? That's the octopus. So this whole thing about realizing at every level, there is the shadow of the level as well that most of us fall into before we see the light. And seeing that from yellow level, it then can lead us, if we really start getting this. I have had people at yellow level that have been there for like 20, 30 years, and then they'll suddenly really understand what the steps are to unlearn the things that were their winning formula and realize those are now their losing formulas. And then they've shifted everything. This is Chad Pope, right? Like what Chad did when I first met Chad in South Africa, he was there going, well, I want to start something. I want to make something go on. I want to have it, wave in some way. He was in the banking industry. His partner, Andrew Mobsey, also in the banking industry. I said, well, what is it that's going to actually disrupt what's happening in the banking industry? He says, well, it's already happening. There's already like crowdfunding that's happening, people coming together to be, not needing the banks. The banks aren't necessarily going to be there in the future. I said, do you think the banks are aware of that? And he goes, well, for sure they're aware, right? But they know it's happening slowly. I said, well, what other things the banks are doing that they think is of highest value? He goes, well, definitely the highest level clients where they've got like these structured notes or they've got these investment like returns that are only for people with a lot of money. I said, well, why don't you actually take that and actually be able to crowdsource that and actually partner with the banks instead of trying to disrupt them immediately? So he created Cashbox and said, right, I'm actually going to start by having a team. We're going to decide what each of us is going to do. So it's all people doing one thing. We're going to then go out there and actually work with other people that are already at green level. And we're going to talk blue level language, which is investor language, right? Which is a whole different thing. And they went from $0 to $12 million in investment funds within 12 months. Like your ability to get into millions very, very quickly once you understand these tools, as opposed to starting in yellow, doing all yourself, and then going out there with basically like all the wrong pieces. And how does that show up in their business? Instead of them creating the whole website themselves and designing it out, they got experts in that they partnered with. Instead of going out saying, how do we do our marketing? And then having to spend lots of money on digital ads or anything like that, they just said, right, who already has the communities that we want? We'll just partner with them. And we'll ask the question, not how do we make money, but how can we help them make money? So when they looked at effectively every investor they brought in, they weren't just saying, well, how much money is that going to make for us? They were saying, how much will that money make for our partners? And once they knew what that was, like, okay, $12 million, 10% of that, like over $1 million is going to our partners. Then they could go to the partners and say, hey, do you want to make $1 million, right? And it's a whole different conversation, which is actually helping other people make money. And that was all a massive mindset, which allowed them to attract all the best people in, so they didn't actually have to figure it out for themselves, right? And that's what Green Level Performer is all about, which is I can now create flow through team rhythm, where you've now got a whole team working together. I mentioned blue already, but let me give an example of someone who went all the way from yellow to blue. And actually, when I first met Jonathan, he was at red level. He was enthusiastic at playing guitar. And imagine that, like someone playing guitar went from $0 to $1 million revenues in under 10 months and is now achieving more like $5 million revenues after just a few years, right? Like playing guitar. But again, what happened to begin with was he's like, well, instead of me just going out being a trainer, why don't I set up a platform that allows other people to come in and actually be learning through a pathway that can get me to millions of people in a community. He had 17,000 clients in the first year that came in and actually learned with information products and with the right guides. And then from there now, he's actually created certifications for people to be able to teach guitar as well. And so he's actually got this entire learning community of people playing guitar, teaching guitar, and that's scaled into the millions of dollars. And he's now at the point where he's like, how do I get involved in the metaverse? How do I start thinking about the future? He's on my top level circle, where it means he's gone through the first mentoring that I do, which is called enterprise level in my crystal circle. That was in 2019. All the way through the pandemic, he went from enterprise to what we have as emerald circle, which is green level. And then he went to sapphire circle, which is blue level. And you have to be qualified at each level, right? So he already got to the $1 million mark. He was around all the other multimillionaires in my sapphire level. And then my final level, indigo, is where people shadowed me through the whole process of actually having the IPO and beyond. And at that level, you're then meeting up with others that also looking to IPO their company and be in the tens to hundreds of millions of dollars as well. That all happens within a period of a couple of years by just understanding you don't trampoline your way to success. You have to take the ladder one step at a time, but you can move through the ladder very quickly. And that's the blue level. Now, blue level is all about now managing your multi-million-dollar portfolio. And the final three, indigo, violet, and ultraviolet, is now talking about not the first three, which is like in the audience, or the next three, which are the musicians on the stage. The blue level, by the way, is a conductor. Conductor does the opposite of performer, just like performer does the opposite of player. In fact, the conductor doesn't even face the audience. The conductor faces their performers. But by actually focusing at the performers and saying, you know, I don't have to worry so much about my customers because I already got them. I don't have to worry so much about my even team members, the CEOs who look after that. I just got to look after my CEOs, right? And so that was what I did to actually make sure I could have multiple companies in Genius Group. And then from there, basically going up to indigo level as well. Indigo level is trustee. That's where you now don't even have to be in the theater. So for example, Warren Buffett is a trustee, somebody who basically is getting paid millions just for having lunch with, but he's trusted by an entire industry, which means whatever he say can move things. Someone like Richard Branson went from blue level, where he actually started physically getting the blues by being apart from everybody because he didn't have to make the music anymore, to then saying, no, I'm going to actually make a stand for green energy. I'm going to make a stand for space travel. And so he became a trustee for the entrepreneur who's the pioneer. And then people actually wanted to see him, pay him millions to be on stage. That then leads to the next level, which is where someone like Elon Musk or someone like Bill Gates is, which is violet, composer level. That's when someone actually is now saying, I'm actually going to create the composition where the money is made. We are living at a time today, if you have been seeing the news of what's just been happening with interest rates, you've been seeing the news about what's happening to recession, where we are in music that has gone off key. You can have the most beautiful violin, you can have the most well-tuned piano, but if you're playing music where the composition itself is something from a bygone era and it no longer counts to the people that are listening, right, then it's not going to sound right no matter what. Poverty is the end result of a bad composition, right? Like, like environmental degradation is the result of a bad composition. So we need new composers that can come in and compose new music, which means new rules, new laws, new currencies that can allow us to move forward. That's what we're seeing right now within the entire Web3 space, within cryptocurrencies, within many of the top entrepreneurs in the world. They're saying there's a better way, and we're not going to wait for anyone else to do this. We're the ones who've been waiting for it, right? And we're going to be the ones that actually make this happen as well. That's the world that we're living in today, which is super awesome, but it's also super scary because it means we've got greater responsibility now than ever before as well. So this whole idea of these levels, which level are you at right now? And if you had a question, what would be a question that would already be popping up for you off the back of what we then just shared as well, which is like super, super important for you to be learning about as we go forward as well, right? Which level do you think you are? I can see we've got, I can see Jagan said yellow octopus, right? Okay, we've got others in here as well. We got, oh, okay, Blake, Dynamos, already some of you are getting onto your actual corners as well, which is great. Bogdan saying a creator as well. And then many of the colors, there's so many comments here, so I'm just kind of like scrolling up. By the way, you all notice, I'm sure many of you know this with Zoom, but you see down there in the kind of tools under it, you can actually download the comments. So you can actually read what everyone's sharing, who they are, and then you can connect with them all on our Genius Suite platform as well, which is super awesome. So I can see, yeah, Catherine's saying Blaze genius, Lola's like orange, flirting with yellow. I like that. Some of the traffic lights, right? I see that often. It's kind of like, red, red, yellow, green, red, yellow, green. So jumping from one to another. Okay, we've got quite a few yellows. We've got some oranges. We've got Cozy at performer level. So that's great. And by the way, wherever you're at, you can move it, but know where you're at, because if you don't, you're going to start from the wrong place in what you're trying to change. And if someone else goes, here's what you need to do, that might be true for them at a different level. That does not mean it's true for you right now. And it'd be damaging for you to try and do the same thing as well, which I think is really important. We've got Marilyn here saying, I can see here, Marilyn, yellow and running out of time to move to another level. I've been doing a bucket list thing and I'm about to crossroads. How do I okay, good. I've got a question here, right? How do I monetize what I've been doing for love? I can see that there is a need to join people together in learning. Flamencos are invariably solo performers. Okay, so that's a great example, right? Like what do you do if you're in one particular space and you're trying to figure out, what is the best way forward? So here's what I would do, right? Like here's just a quick little tip, right, that I'm going to just give right now for someone like Marilyn. And let me see if I can just copy her in here, because I'm going to just do a very quick piece of live mentoring so you can just see how powerful this can be if you really choose to. What I just did to Marilyn, I just put it into Google, right? I'll share my screen so you can see what I'm doing right now. I always look at the fact that every one of us, our real life, if we really wake up to it, is a combination of a jigsaw puzzle and a treasure hunt, right? The jigsaw puzzle is the fact that you better know what you want to have on the lid and what the picture looks like, or else it doesn't matter how many pieces you pick up, you're never going to put them together, right? So for most of us, we don't have a picture of what our ideal life looks like, but you got to have that. But the second thing is realizing that once you've got what that picture is, by looking at what other people might be doing and which pieces you like best and what then your picture looks like, don't expect all the pieces to be in the box, because they're not in there, which means you've now got to go on a treasure hunt all around the world to actually find the pieces. The good news is it's easier than ever to find the pieces. So let's imagine I was to go and just take like 5 minutes, just look at the picture for Marilyn, and then look at what does that mean in terms of the treasure hunt and what that might look like as well. And take Society 5.0, which is the fact that we're all connected, as a way for us to actually get to it as well. So what I've done is just put her name in here. So you might have seen the comments in the chat. So here she is. I can see straight away, she's got a Facebook page. She's got this business here, right? Like Woman in Business, the She Factor, and she's talking about herself there. There's some images so you can see what she looks like as well. This is great, right? So basically she's out there saying, hey, I'm Marilyn and I'm looking for good stuff to do, right? I can already get a clue. If I was to just go basically to 3 places, I'm just going to take the top 3, right? So I'll come over to here to Marilyn Parker. In fact, I'm going to take a number of different pathways. This one here, most of us have a Facebook page. Most of us are looking at something which is there, which is important for us, right? So we already know something about Marilyn. It's Rob's birthday today. He always loved flowers, as do I. So Marilyn has lost a loved one, right? We can see that she basically has as we go through this, right? Like great friends that she's connecting up with as she's going as well. And as we know, Facebook actually gives us a really nice, shape and space in terms of where we are as we go forward as well, right? In terms of the things that we actually interested. So we can see there's definitely a connection in spirit. There's a connection to the environment. There's a connection to basically what it is to actually be living a full life. And we can see like that she's interested in nutrition. She's interested in basically well-being. And we can also see if we actually come back to this, right? Because everything is about what are the colors on the picture before the picture itself, that she has a brand, which she calls SheFactor. And so with this brand SheFactor, she's actually got other posts and so on, which don't really tell you that much about SheFactor necessarily, but she's saying naturopathic nutritionist and flamenco dancer singer, future from the square mile, right? So you've already got like some, great pathway that she's actually taken in life. And then we can then basically at the same time, go to, let's say, for example, well, she's got a website here, the SheFactor, and a YouTube channel as well, right? So again, it's just reinforcing what we already know, that she has a real interest in psychology. She's got an interest in basically how we can evolve. And she's now talking about her husband as well, that we just saw on Facebook right there, right? Following a total rethink after my husband's sudden death 6 years ago, I found myself, I had a heart condition, sought ways to manage this, of the nutrition, and I'm just qualifying as a naturopathic nutritionist and finishing my Gestalt psychotherapy training after a 20-year gap. So she's in an area of discovery as well. So what's really interesting here is we can take a pathway of which can take on one of three levels, right? Let me take the very first level. The very first level is when you're in a community like ours, right? 8 subscribers, right? You've now got 9 subscribers. There we go. If we're in a community like ours, right, then the first thing is you get connected to the right people in the right way that allow you to then evolve, right? So I'll give you one example. The fact that she loves flamenco journeys, she's in flamenco dancing, means that I would straight away say, well, then you definitely need to be now connected to Maren. Maren Oslak, she basically is in Chicago, and she basically runs, here, let me actually show her, because she also is a beautiful dancer, and she actually has a company which is called Heart and Soul. And she has evolved from where she was there, here's Maren, and she basically started where she was very much at orange level, trying to make her entire studio work. And she basically, through the mentoring, went all the way through from starting in that space and then moving up to now blue level, where she now has other people running her entire studio. She still goes when she loves to go there, but she no longer needs to go there because the entire Heart and Soul dance is now looking after itself. And she actually was able to really step out of the way of all of the people that were now in it. But she's now evolving this whole idea of global dance and linking in all of this to what she's really doing, which is actually helping people with their actual anxiety, their stress. She's actually teamed up with a team that's now evolving this and growing exactly the same way that you are as well. And then you've actually got someone who's at a high level already, where you might go, wow, you're actually already putting certain elements in place that I can get connected to as well. So that would be like one perfect example of someone to get connected to. Second person, who I'm sure you know of already, and many people on this call also are part of her group, is Gifu, right? Which is Bea Benkova. And Bea, like her whole focus, right, is about actually enabling those people out there that, and this is a Gifu here, where we can see that it's all about bringing one-of-a-kind, visionary, inspirational content, communication, and new possibilities, and calling people into action. So this is the Global Institute for Extraordinary Women, right? And this is the whole, here's Bea here. This is the whole idea that it's only from us actually working together that we can actually really evolve our society. And so to actually just be even in a community like this and say, well, what are the opportunities to evolve and grow this within my city, within my country? And by the way, obviously we're talking about someone like Maren here, but for each of you, this is all part of this as well. Do you notice that in both these two cases, like Maren didn't have to go out and find the jigsaw puzzle piece. She just had to connect with the jigsaw puzzle piece. She didn't have to go create it herself with a jigsaw, right? Because they already exist, but it's about connecting out with those elements and actually then bringing them on board as well. But let's say we took a third path, right? Let's say we actually said, okay, this whole aspect, right, of dance, right, and the idea of even flamenco, right? Let's take that very specific thing, right? Flamenco dance, right? And let's talk about that from the point of view, right, of a movement, right, where there's like people around the world that are doing incredible things that we may not even know about, right, in terms of where it is about the involvement. We've got here different people that are sharing different things that are taking place. If we actually said largest community, because I don't see it there on the movement, so I'm just going to go here, and let me just like link it in here. And we have this largest flamenco dance lesson. Okay, so that, that's something that happens. You know, this one here, country with the most flamenco academies, which is super awesome when you think about the different groups here and saying, well, that's really interesting. If you actually took which would be right the best dance academy, that would be a really interesting place to go. And of course, you'd know of many of these places already. And let's say we actually did this because they already have it there in the UK already, Academy Maria Serrano. Let's take a particular place as an example where we say, whatever is meaningful, make it meaningful, which means whatever you have as a number, make it a name, turn it into a person, right? And so we actually have someone here, right? And her name, we just saw it here, right, is Maria Serrano. And she has this dance academy. She's got people sharing. She actually just posted 8 hours ago. If we were interested in, like, look, no one's actually commented on this at the moment, you know, hi, what you do looks great. Love flamenco. Would love to connect you with my friend. And I'm actually going to put in not just who you are, but also I'm going to link it. I think I'll link it to the, I'm going to link it to Maren, because then that way it kind of links the pieces together, because there's always like something good that comes out of it. Because you notice, like we saw Maren with everything around the dance, but we haven't yet seen anything on Marilyn, even though this is something that she loves. We see it here on the YouTube videos, right? But at the moment, because if she looks here, it's like, well, there's not too many people here yet. And this is like from 6 years ago, right? So basically it's not current, whereas this is very current. So we can actually post there from friends, Maren. So we can then post Maren's thing there. Oops, and Marilyn, right? By the way, have you noticed that by me just connecting these together, and let me just put in Maren here, there's Maren and Marilyn as well. Then by basically just doing that, and then actually just posting this here, so at least we have that. 2 things have happened. The first is, I'm not just talking about doing something, I'm doing it, right? Which means that you didn't finish by just saying, oh, I just thought of something. It's like, no, I thought of it and I took action straight away. Your gap between thoughts and action have to be immediate. The second thing is we've all just committed ourselves, right? The universe has just seen, oh, you just posted something, like she's going to actually see that now. And then something's going to happen off the back of that. It's like, well, guess what? The ripple effect has already started, right? And so basically every moment should be a ripple. That's what Society 5.0 is all about. It's like the actions are actually happening in real time. And by me just sharing that and going through, what I've actually done is do more than just say there's 3 different options of what Marilyn can already do that could totally transform the pathway she's actually taking. And none of it had to be her creating a new product or her going out there to kind of put a P&L together. It was about just connecting to where the flow is and letting the flow come back to her, and is doing it in multiple ways. And even the different examples I was giving all actually links up together as well. So the reason this is so important is that we are transforming in real time. And everything that I'm sharing right now isn't there just as theory. Again, as they say, academics need to know in order to do, but entrepreneurs need to do in order to know. So the actual doing is what actually makes a difference. So whatever's the biggest learning or thing that you just got out of what I just did there and what I was just sharing, what's your biggest realization, or what's the kind of biggest thing that just showed up for you off the back of that, right? Because I think that's like super important. And I can see actually there's been some comments on here already that people have been posting. You know, here's Bay's actually been posting here with the Jiffy side and posting that on here as well. We've got here, Marilyn's actually posted back as well. I'm chatting with my local sports center, and they also have Bollywood dance. So I'm likely to be teaching there, but I also keep up lessons with some of my teachers in Spain. I'm also thinking about writing a book about a family I found who went to Pan Spain. Great story. So some really super awesome things that you're already connecting and thinking about, which is fantastic. Jeff wrote here, okay, so gap between thought and action is immediate. And then also relations are really powerful. Quieten the fears and just do it is what Robin's saying. Take action, connect is what Sue's saying. And they do it like, and the thing is, have you noticed it's way easier for me to do it for other people than even doing it just for myself, right? So if you sit down in front of the computer or sit down and go, oh, I've got to go do this thing. Have you noticed that in a cocktail party, if you have to go out and just say hello and meet people on your own, it's difficult. But if you've got someone who shows up and you go, oh, I'm going to introduce you to some people, then it's so much easier. And so the fundamental thing here isn't just even like what's the action you want to take, but what's the community or the people you want to get involved in to add value to them in such a way that it all just basically just echoes back to you as well, right? And you're going to find it way easier to basically add value to 10 people, and then having 10 people add value to 10 back to you, which is now 100 people, versus you trying to go out there and get 10 people interested in you in the first place. So super important as we go forward. Okay, so that was a little bit of a diversion as we actually go into the next step that I want to be sharing right now as well, of basically how all this links into the wealth dynamics. And I'm going to be doing this in a very special way, because while I'm going to share with you the basics of wealth dynamics, I'm going to share with you what wealth dynamics 5.0 is and how different it is as well to everything else that I'm going to share. Before I do that, I just want to ask a question, because I can already do this 45 minutes before we finish, which is, do you want to know if there was just one simple thing for you to do that would actually already take you on a fast track down the path? Would you like to know what that simple thing is? Like, and you do want to know it now, right? So you don't have to wait till later. So if the answer is yes, just post it. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of yeses coming. Okay, all right. There's yes with exclamation mark. All right. Okay, I got it. Okay. So let me actually just fast track to that. So some of you can actually multitask and even just take the actions now while I then add the Wealth Dynamics 5.0 part onto this as well, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drop this link. This link might disappear pretty quickly, but you can actually hopefully see it on the piece here as well. So I'll just drop that link down there. And let me just share what this is, because effectively it's a gateway, it's a doorway into everything I'm talking about. Whether you already are part of our community, whether you're brand new, right? It's the same thing. By the way, this doorway here is our doorway into our very special little room that we have in Vision Villas in Bali, right? So I'm going to be in Bali in 2 weeks' time. Now, next week, I already fly to Singapore, then I fly to Bali, and we have our Wealth Dynamics Masters, which I'm very excited by. I'm not going to be, unfortunately, be able to tell you about Wealth Dynamics Master today because it's already sold out, but it is like a magical time. And if you are coming, super looking forward to seeing you there. But basically here, we are going to be doing something before we actually complete the Masters. It happens on the 18th of October. It's virtual, right? So it's 8 o'clock in the morning in London. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon in Singapore, 6 o'clock in the evening in Sydney. So depending on where you are in the world, ask yourself, would you like to come for a workshop for 4 hours, where in this session, I basically have just given one quick example with someone like Marilyn of like, you know, what happens when you start utilizing this way of thinking. What we do in the workshop is much less of me just speaking like I am speaking right now and sharing content. It is the next step where we actually go into the practical application, where you're then actually getting many different examples at different levels of people actually getting huge value and then getting connected with each other and seeing the steps going forward, right? Plus I go through the top 10 trends on the key things you need to know going forward. And we're going to utilize the Wealth Dynamics 5.0 to get to exponential growth during that 4 hours as well. Now you see something kind of ridiculous here where it says a special offer $1. Like seriously, if we're going to do basically a 4-hour workshop for $1, why not just make it for free, right? And the reason that we do it for $1 is because everyone can afford $1, but the real question is, can you afford the 4 hours to invest your time, right? And the reason I say that is there's too many people in the world that actually are saying, I'm too busy to actually be successful, right? So this actually kind of weeds out those people who go, I'm too busy, from those people who go, no, actually, it's worth an investment of my time, but you then got to make the conscious decision to actually pay the dollar to come, right? So generally on a call like this, we'll have at least half of everyone going, well, of course that's worth it, and they'll just do it, right? But there'll still be others who go, well, you know, I either can't make that date or you know, it's just not right for me. So that's basically why we just have it as a qualifier, but that's the point, right? What I'm about to share is not something that's going to break the bank, but it is going to actually give you that next step. And then you're going to be around other like-minded people that think the same. And we don't invite anyone into this that has not been through a masterclass like this. So you've got the grounding on the things I'm sharing, and then we can actually use that scaffolding to then start working together, right? So basically you're hearing about the structure. Now we go into the lighthouse and make it work. And this pre-launch day, like what we're going to be doing on this day is we're going to go through the wealth frequency. So we have something called the Wealth Frequency Star. The Wealth Dynamics Square, we're going to go into much more detail. I'm still going to cover some of that today, but you're going to find out exactly what your Wealth Dynamics profile is, because we're going to give you the Wealth Dynamics test, which you can do online, and you find out exactly what you are with the actual report. And you can bring your team with you as well, obviously, right? And then the Wealth Spectrum Rainbow we've just been talking about. If you haven't done that test, you get to do that and you read the report, understand the steps, what they mean, come with your questions, and then we actually get very interactive, right? So I'm not doing many of these workshops anymore. This one I'm doing live myself, so that you actually get the experience with people all over the world. And you can see what an awesome group of people we have from all the comments that have come through so far. So I share a little bit more about that. I share more about Society 5.0, which obviously is really critical for where we're going right now as well. And there's some super awesome elements in terms of practical steps on how you build the business you have right now, how you make sure that you're actually driving yourself up. I'll give you $100,000 examples, $1 million examples, even $10 million examples of people that started with pretty much zero and actually stepped into each of those levels. And because we're going to make it interactive, I'm actually going to have some of our top mentors, some of our top partners, some of our top clients actually sharing their experiences as well. So that you're going to be able to hear from them exactly what the next steps are that they're taking in their life and what you can learn from them that you can already apply today as well, right? So this basically is something which is my big passion, right? Because it gets me very close to where the action is and what everyone is up to and what they're doing as well. And most importantly, it actually leads into, right, like all the different things I'm about to share in the next 45 minutes as well. So unfortunately, right, because we don't want to basically have so many people that we just get inundated. You can see in the chat just how much we're all missing the chat because there's so much going on in there right now as well. So unfortunately with this, we can't be inviting everyone to come join, but if we get 50 of everyone on here, just basically clicking on and buying, then you're definitely going to be coming. And I'm saying that now, because while I will now share the rest of the session in the next 45 minutes, if they all kind of like, fill up, they all fill up. So if you are interested, go ahead and book that. And I'm going to be sharing later exactly what the different steps are as we go through it as well. So with that being shared, right, like, and by the way, if you do decide you're coming and you're going in, then just post a yes in the comments so the team know, because we've got a whole team on here as well. As you saw some of them earlier, Michelle's on here, Yvette's on here. And so basically they're kind of like in there in the conversation as well. And if you've got any questions about it, in terms of like, is it recorded or, it's like, can I bring my team or so on, post them in the chat. They'll answer that as well. We can multitask. We're all able to do that nowadays. While I get back to the next step here, which I want to share, which is super important. And that is, why are there only 8 different paths to wealth? Why 8? Why not 10? Why not 15? Why 8? I remember asking this when I was basically in music, like, why are there only 8 notes in the quaver, right? Like, why is that, right? And of course, we know there's many more notes, right? But they tend to be in different octaves, right? And they also tend to be a mix of those notes as well. So by understanding the 8 core notes, you can go, oh, that's why. Oh, I do a little bit of that sometimes, I do some of this time. But if I did all of that this time, then suddenly I'll create that attraction, right? So these are not boxes to fit in. These are paths up the mountain. And so understanding these paths and the fact that they're natural to each other is super, super important, right? And so why are there a top and bottom, a left and a right? Like, why is that? Well, the first thing is to know that these 2 axes are based on the fact that all flow in money is very similar to the flow of water. It has a natural law to it. And if you understand the laws, you can always create that flow. Like as a kid at school, you knew that if the teacher wanted you to create an ongoing flow through a pipe, you simply had to basically tip the pipe and create a gradient and the water would flow. We just knew that, right? Well, in the same way, many of us are looking for a flow in money, but we don't know how to tip the gradient of money in such a way it just flows to us. Right? But all the most successful wealth creators, and what we heard earlier with Elon Musk, is they figured out how to do this at scale. And the way is by realizing the pipe doesn't just have a gradient, just like a river, it also has a width, which means you can actually widen the river as well. So first of all, instead of thinking about a height gradient, think about a value gradient, right? So money will always flow when there is a value differential, right? And so as a result, if I decide I want to, like sell, I don't know, let's say I want to sell this mug here, right? So if I wanted to sell the mug, then I would basically like look at this mug and say, right, like $10, right? Some people would buy it for $10, some people wouldn't. Now, let's say I said, okay, well, that made me $10 at a very moment in time. Well, could I make it for $100? Well, if I actually had a high gradient 10 times, right? Like, okay, I'm going to get it signed by a celebrity. I'm going to make it out of like, gold plated. Like, then definitely there'll be people that will buy it for 10 times the amount. So that's an example of being able to increase the value in such a way that you're multiplying the amount of flow at speed. But also at the same time, I can say, look, it's $10, but I want to make $100 by just selling 10 at a time. That will increase the volume, right? Which is about widening it. So one is called value, one is called leverage. Value will increase speed of money flow, and leverage will increase volume of money flow. So far, so good, right? Like that's basic economics. However, here's the problem. We all do things in natural ways. And most of us aren't aware of what the opposites are. And the definition of an opposite is you cannot do one at the same time as the other. So I'll give you an example of this, right? Folding arms. Everyone try this, right? We're going to do a little physical exercise here. Just fold your arms like this. So it's like I'm folding my arms, right? I'll just show this in a little bit. There we go, folding my arms. So we'll fold our arms, right? Okay, easy, right? Natural. Didn't even have to think about it, right? So something natural is something you don't have to think about. Okay, but notice how you're folding your arms. Is it right over left or left over right? Okay, I'm right now, my left is over right, my right is over left, right? But you know, I'm confused. You probably can't see because I'm on mirror image on the video. But in any event, like the question here is, could you just suddenly reverse it and actually have your opposite happen on the count of 3? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, here's what happened, right? Because whenever you're in audience, this happens as well. Some of you figured out how to do the opposite. Some of you went like this. You went 1, 2, 3, and then you went back exactly the same way, right? Those of you who did the opposite, which meant you kind of went this way instead, does it feel natural? 100% not, right? And in fact, if I just shook it out and I wasn't even thinking later, I'd go back the normal way again. So natural is what happens when you basically aren't thinking, right? And here's the challenge is that there are 2 opposites to value and 2 opposites to leverage. And if you aren't doing the one that's natural to you, then in high stress situations or at that critical moment, you're going to actually forget to do it the right way. And you're going to undo all that good that you did. So the way to get from one level to the next in the lighthouse, which we went through in the first half, is only through your natural way, right? Because you're going to keep on falling back down unless you constantly are doing something sustainable, and natural is sustainable, right? So really, really important here. This is the opposite of what we learn at school, right? Learning at school, like, you know, I thought I was bad at school because I was natural at art. Like art wasn't hard work. I loved art, right? But what happened was because I wasn't natural at languages, like I would feel it really hard work. My parents, my teacher would say, Roger, work harder on your French, right? I'd be like, this is really hard work. I had to give up some art lessons to do more French lessons. I mean, that was how bad it was, right? So many of us are going through life just focusing on our weaknesses and feeling bad about things, right? As opposed to focusing on our strength and getting someone else to work on the weakness. And every time we get to the weakness, go, wait a minute, that's my opposite. I shouldn't even be doing that, and go back to the strength again. The higher your talent in one particular area, the more pronounced your opposite will show up as a weakness. And that's really important. That's why the top people in the world will be absolutely fine with the fact they're super weak in other things, as opposed to trying to be a generalist in anything. So there's a good chance the reason you're not great at what you're great at is because you're spending way too much time worrying about what you're not great at, right? And so it's about basically like turning your focus into a knife as opposed to a spoon, and making that shift right now as well, right? So what are the 2 opposites of value? They are up and down, not left and right. Like, you know, folding my arms is left and right, but up and down is a little bit of a different thing. So here you've got innovation and timing. This is about the way our mind works, right? We're either head in the clouds, like Richard Branson, or ear to the ground, like a Nelson Mandela or a Mother Teresa, right? Where it's all about basically sensory thinking, which is down here, where everything's in balance, as opposed to intuitive thinking, where everything is off balance, where it's all about just one thing. And understanding that people up here are very good at what we call innovation, which is one of the opposites of value, versus timing, which is the other opposite of value, innovation or timing. So this is like super, super powerful, because like you'll notice that people who are really highly innovative, they're not very sensory, right? They'll wear odd socks. They won't hear what anyone else is saying, right? They won't notice if someone's crying in the room because they're like, you know, focusing at like what they're writing on the board, right? All this kind of stuff. Where someone down here, they notice all of that stuff, but they actually would never come up with a 5-year plan. They're like, Warren Buffett, I have no idea what's going to happen in 5 years, because they're not thinking about innovation. They're thinking about timing. Wasn't the right time to buy, right time to sell, right time to speak, right time to not speak, right? So this is dynamo energy, which is wood energy, which is always grow. This is earth energy, which is to slow, right? This is the father energy. This is the mother energy, right? This is the yang. This is the yin. So understanding that you can't be yang and yin at the same time, right? Otherwise, everything's just shades of gray, right? But if you actually say, okay, I'm going to be really good at what I'm really good at, and then just become great in this area, and I'll have other people really good at this area down here, then things really start to take off. I'm a creative profile, so I'm in this space up here, right? But so this is basically 2 of them, right? But there's also a left and right. And left and right is your action dynamic, because all entrepreneurship is thinking to action. It's about dreams to reality, right? So at this point here, left and right, this is basically all and by the way, this is an upgraded Square from 10 years ago, right? So this wasn't the original one in 2002. This was the 2012 one. That's why you can see Mark Zuckerberg still looking like a teenager here, right? And this basically was like looking as well, left and right, where Christine Lagarde on the left was like head of IMF, is all about the systems, all about the details. And you can see there Meg Whitman, who ran HP, she ran eBay. She's on the right. She didn't start any of those companies up, right? But she's very, very good at the magnify side, which is the extrovert, right? The one who's very good at people. So understanding that you're going to have supporters that are always asking the question, who? People who are intuitive. The dynamo ask the question, what? That's the spring energy. The magnify, which is the who, is the summer energy. The bottom, which is basically the earth energy, is the question when, which is why they're so good at timing. And on the left-hand side there, that is the introvert energy. That's the question, how? Multiply is the opposite of magnify. Multiply is, how do I do this without me? How do I make it simple and make many? Which is obviously what Mark Zuckerberg did. Like, there's a whole lot easier ways to make friends than creating an entire system to make friends, right? But that's how he goes about doing it, because he's like, how do I make this simple so anyone can do it? Whereas on the right-hand side, where you see Beyonce is a star, she's not saying, how can this happen without me? She's saying, how can this only happen with me? I don't want to make it simple and so people can make many. I want to make it so complex, they need me to be the one that shows up on stage. And then I'll get paid the $10 million, right? So this is magnify instead of multiply. Like, each of us have a natural way. And if you don't do it in your natural way, or you don't have a team that does it in a natural way, you're always going to have a gap. And that's where the leaking plumbing is going to happen, right? Your business will not fail because of your strength. Your business will fail because of your lack of focus at your strength. And more importantly, your focus on your weakness, right? And that's where the holes actually show up. So make sure you have other people in strength where you're weak, and you don't have to employ them. You can partner with them, right? Within our community, we've got so many people that have taken the Wealth Dynamics test that you can then find, go on there, look for the people that are supporter profiles, look for the people who Lord profiles. Dealmaker, that's Master Yoshi-san, right? Which is all about when, it's a timing linked to the who, right? So whereas accumulator is the when linked to the how. That's Warren Buffett. Someone who's actually accumulating assets as they go as well. We're seeing this massive shift in the world at the moment, where certain parts of the world are going to winter, certain parts are going to spring, and understanding where you are in the world as far as economy goes and what that means in terms of how you make money is absolutely critical. So two things. The first one, if you know what your profile is, please go ahead and just post in your profile, right? If you have a sense, but you're not sure, maybe just post one or two so we get an idea as well. You might even find that on the comment section, you find someone you really need right now, because supporters definitely need lords, right? Creators definitely need traders, right? And you actually say, oh, those are the people I actually need at the moment. And then basically there might be people you want to already reach out to in the comment section that you might find really valuable to have a conversation with, right? And you might also basically say, hey, you know what I need right now is to have a conversation with someone just like me, because I can then basically have someone who can relate to what I'm about. Never go and look for mentors who are not the same frequency as you, because what they do will look easy, but for you it will not. And definitely look for mentors who are of the same or very similar to frequency to you. But more importantly, make sure that they are somebody who is ideally at the same or higher level than you. I see too many infrared people going out, connecting to other infrared people and wondering why it doesn't turn green, right? That's just not how colors work, right? So being really aware and clear that you can now be using the levels together with the actual corner or the window of the lighthouse, because this is a lighthouse here as a floor plan, then you can actually already like say, hey, we both see the sun at the same time because it's rising from the east and we're in the east, right? As opposed to saying the sun's rising and then someone else going, no, it's not. And it's like they're looking out basically the west side while you're looking at the east side. By the way, each of these are the old versions of the creator slides where you can see Steve, Bill, J.K. Rowling, Sarah Blakely, the stars, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Hillary Clinton, Beyonce Knowles. You can see this is all 10 years old. You know, supporters, everyone up here never had to start up a business because they're in someone else's business. The deal makers, there's not a single person that has made a rich list anywhere in the world that did not do it through one of these paths, right? Because in the same way, there's not a single athlete that becomes world-class and top in their field that is trying to do something that's an opposite field at the same time, right? Like they're always going to be specializing in one particular area because time is too short to actually be world-class in multiple areas, right? And it's really important. And someone like Michael Jordan, he showed that, right? When he went to baseball, he wasn't as good as basketball. He went back to basketball knowing that that was his game. And as a result, became the best player in the world, right? And so here's mechanics, right? The Mark Zuckerbergs, Jeff Bezos, Christine Lagarde of the world. And here's just a story of Dave and Jeremy Harris, right? Like Jeremy helped us to launch our IPO. He's an accountant. The two of them together created Grow CFO Co, where they actually were now developing a way for them to be virtual CFOs in other people's businesses. But what's so cool here is that by, like, first of all, Deborah finding out she's a mechanic profile, and Jeremy finding out he's a creator profile. Jeremy hadn't even read all of his emails, and she was organizing his emails and found these emails about a Wealth Dynamics profile that he'd taken some years earlier. And she's like, what even is this? And so she then went and took it, and off the back of that, helped organize the entire business going forward. Creators are great at starting things, mechanics are great at finishing things. And so the two of them work so well, not only in their business, but also as a couple and also as parents to their children as well. And that's really where the power of this is. This is a holistic method, which actually gets you into flow no matter what. Getting from the wood to the fire, to the earth, to the metal. And most importantly, that gets you to the fifth element, that in the Chinese elements is the water element, and water is the why, right? That's right in the center. What here is basically the wood energy. What allows you to grow, right? That's wood. Wood grows, fire glows, earth slows, metal knows. So if you want to know something, you've got to go through this first, and then you eventually get to the water, which flows, right? And this is the why question, which is why you even here doing the things that you're doing to begin with. By the way, all of this, if you are interested, is linked to something called the I Ching, which is the book of changes, which is basically the science of flow and the science of time. Whereas Carl Jung, who was the first to actually take the I Ching and to bring it to the West, he's the one who was the first to translate the first I Ching together with Richard Wilhelm and publish it in the West. He came up with what is today MBTI, disc profiling. He inspired all of those psychometric tests, but all of them took out the fifth element, which is why when you do those, they're pretty spiritless. We kept it in ours because Carl Jung spent the rest of his life focusing at that fifth element, which he called the collective unconscious. And with that collective unconscious, he came up with a word that no one had ever used before called synchronicity. And synchronicity is what shows up when you become your true self. Right? So all of this is actually about so much more than an entrepreneur journey. This is about the entrepreneur journey itself becoming a journey of self-discovery and becoming a spiritual journey of who we are. Because if there's one thing the world really needs right now, it is a more united spirit, right? And I hope everyone agrees that when it comes down to spirit, there's sometimes nothing more refreshing than a true entrepreneurial spirit. And so with that being shared, let me now take you for our last 15 minutes together or 20 minutes together on a little bit of a ride, because everything I shared was basically like how I would normally share Wealth Dynamics. But for all of you who actually decide to come and join us on our workshop, you're going to be the first to get this, which is the guide to Wealth Dynamics 5.0. And this one here does a whole lot more than just explain what Wealth Dynamics is. What it does is it gives you an entirely new square. And in that square, this is a big document, by the way, they've got all the videos and so on in here. We're doing these new videos in here as well. But let me just take you to the square, because it's got all these new people that I showed earlier today that actually give you an opportunity to see that even in the last decade, the number of people that made money in new ways. One of the most famous traders today is Cathie Wood, right? Like, who would have thought, right? Like, a time when there were so many male-dominated people in Wall Street, that it will be a woman who'd be one of the most listened to traders out there at the moment. And she's actually investing heavily in this guy's business, Elon Musk, who I mentioned earlier. We've got here Vitalik Buterin, who created Ethereum, very much mechanic profile, right? Opposite of someone like Gloria Greiner, who is on Shark Tank as basically being a star, right? Like, she made so much of her money through QVC. She deliberately looks for investments that are based on what she can promote, which is the opposite of someone like Kevin O'Leary, who isn't looking to promote things. He's looking to basically hold on to things that are going to create ongoing cash flow for him, right? And understand, like, richest woman in China, richest man in India are the opposite, lord and supporter, right? Or like the opposite of a mechanic would be here, like the person who actually is leading all of YouTube as basically like saying, I'm going to be a deal maker that's going to look after all of the stars, right? So every one of these different people have used a very different pathway in terms of how they've actually grown. And you can see basically all of the updates that we're actually giving in here to all of them are in here as well. So instead of me going through all this, let me share with you a couple of slides which are coming after these slides I shared earlier, because then it gives you a taste of where we're going. This is especially for those of you, number one, who already have chosen to actually come for the workshop that we're going to do. It's also number two for those of you who are considering and haven't yet got your $1 place, and it will give you an idea of exactly what are the things that are going to be on the other side of this doorway, right? So first of all, we are going to be putting a package together. We're not actually offering it yet, but we will be, where you can be getting a full pack of the report, VIP tickets, everything. Now, by the way, you're already going to be getting, like, just by you coming along for the workshop, you're already going to be getting a Wealth Dynamics report test to do. We're going to send you a token. You're going to get that token. You can then do it. So when you come for the workshop, you already have that info as well, right? At the same time, we have all the events coming up in terms of Entrepreneur Summit, Investor Summit. I'll tell you a bit more about them as we go forward as well. And all the details about a whole range of new people who are the ones that are actually going to be the most successful in the next decade. And I'm also going to be sharing about the different top industries and which cycle each of those industries are in. And so which are they best suited for right now? And who we're going to be expecting to see at the top of those industries, right? Are they going to be deal makers? Are they going to be creators? That's all going to be part of that as well. And this is all things that we've actually seen in the past. We're also going to be doing something super exciting when we actually launch this, which is all happening in the next 4 months. We are going to be launching in multiple languages. You can see here, Spanish, Italian, French, in Chinese and Japanese, English, in German. We are going to be providing all of these different options that allow you to basically share this with friends all around the world. And you'll see also something here on the left that says niche reports, where we now have got our partners that have been actually using this already within industries where they have now started building really, really great communities that whether you're in real estate, whether you are, as you heard earlier, of Jishu, extraordinary woman looking for something really extraordinary in terms of where you grow. And you can see here that she's evolved Extraordinary Woman into Evolutionary Woman. So basically like looking at how we actually now are looking to evolve to the next level of humanity. It's all part of this. We have real estate investors, we have overall share stock investors. In each of these cases, then you say, well, how does a creator operate if they're in this area, right? Project management, well, how do we operate if we're actually working in that area too? And this actually gives me a good opportunity to just share with you just a few more examples of real life people, some of which are on this call right now today, that are going to be basically at our workshop and basically sharing their stories as we go as well, right? And they actually like a link to these different companies we go. So you can see here, Bayer on the left, I already mentioned this. This is now the Wealth Dynamics and Jifu Wealth Square for Evolutionary Woman. And you can see how she's evolved the woman, where basically every one of the people on the square are all evolutionary, extraordinary women themselves. You can see digital project management, where you've got all these different ways that you can actually now build out your digital marketing pathways, build out the way that you actually want to be running your projects within your company, using agile technology across everything that you're now doing, right? Whether you're a large corporation or just getting started. Real estate investing, like how do you actually go about investing if you're a deal maker compared to if you're a lord, especially in today's market. And each one of these then basically gives you the ability to link to it and have the supplementary link. So Bayer has been in our program for a long time, right? I'm actually giving her a lot of airtime on this one because it came up also earlier when we were sharing with Marilyn. But basically, like she has evolved and grown and connected with people all over the world. And I still remember when I first said to her, look, why climb the mountain when you can parachute in? I was part of something called the Transformational Leadership Council, which is based in the US. That had its own offshoots now starting up in different parts of the world. She connected with a group in Europe. From there, she then attracted an incredible group of women CEOs, public figures, educators, all within her community as well. And she's now evolved into now having communities in UK, Europe, LA, and New York. Jan, who is her partner and her husband, is also super awesome, actually took all of Wealth and Talent Dynamics and actually built that into something that now is available in Slovakia and also in Czech Republic, and now also is evolving the programs within Evolutionary Women. And so there's basically the whole growth there that we're going to hear about. We're also seeing the same thing. Oh, I'm just going through here because it took me to I think it took me to the actual site there. So I'm stopping that for a second and I'll try and get back to my slides. Okay. Okay. And then the second thing, which I think is super interesting, is when we talk about the idea of actually leading in a very practical way your team. We've got the same thing happening here with Joseph, who basically has been with us evolving his company called Shine into a digital project management company and using all these tools to really start building up all the different programs. I've been mentoring Joseph for a long time. He's seen a huge growth in doubling his community to 6,000 members now. And everyone's looking for the practical steps now to move forward. So he's actually built a full project management micro school on the Genius U platform. And he's seen the revenues on that more than double over the last year as well, right? So again, super exciting to see that kind of growth that's taking place. Also, each one of these, right, as I mentioned, okay, my links are going a bit crazy here. Each one of these links, as I mentioned, we'll give you links to all of this as we go forward as well. But how you do this at all different levels is also a really critical part of this. And how this then links to investment. Well, we have Simon Zucci. Simon Zucci's company, Property Investment Network, we actually bought over, and it's now part of Genius Group as well. And this is like something which is relevant for all countries. Simon's actually got the Property Investors Network in the UK with 50 different cities where you've got investors meeting up with each other. And so many of them already are using the Wealth Dynamics program in order for them to find out exactly what their natural path is, and more importantly, how to build their team, because the person who's best at finding the property is not the same as the best person to manage the property, right? Best person to find the funding is not necessarily the best person to then find the connections, right? So understanding how to do that is super, super important. And all of this leads into what's going to be happening in November and December. If you come along for the workshop, we give you a free ticket to also come along for the Global Entrepreneur Festival, which is the full summit. The reason I put these photos up here is I mentioned Kathy Wood already. When I met with Kathy, I met with her and was introduced through Peter Diamandis. Peter Diamandis set up the X Prize. He is one of our guest speakers at our summit. So it's virtual, or you can physically come to the London event. And we are super, super excited by this, because by actually showing up, you're actually going to be at the biggest gathering of entrepreneurs in 2022. But we're also going to have thousands online. You can see 20,000 entrepreneurs. And Peter's going to be sharing the top trends that are coming our way. I was there with Eva, and we were using the latest AR goggles, which was super awesome fun as we went through that as well. So we have that coming. This is the schedule where we are right now here, just getting launched. And we basically have got a number of things coming up where I'm going to Bali. We also have got an investor summit that's coming up as well, with some incredible investors that are going to be sharing. And then we then lead that into the Entrepreneur Summit after that too. Again, if you take the $1 workshop, we'll give you a ticket to the Investor Summit. We'll give you a ticket to the Entrepreneur Summit. We don't want you to miss out on all the things coming up, because the more prepared you are for the coming year, the better. And anything you cannot attend, we give you the recordings too, so you can then follow up on it and have a lot of very highly inspiring sessions that you can be digesting between now and the new year. So this is it. This is what basically for $1, you basically have an option of, who said there was inflation nowadays, right? Like for all the cost of education growing, like how we're evolving, growing this, super awesome. And if there's anything that I have actually shared that you also feel would be something you don't just want to be learning from, but you want to be earning from, let me just share this as well. And then I'm going to be coming back for a little Q&A for my last 10 minutes with you guys. This is something that Michelle Nalting put together. And I'm going to come to Michelle in a moment, so she can kind of share, like, you know, her view of the coming months and how excited she is by what's going to be happening. But you're seeing here that we have all these curriculum partners. Like you just saw what Joseph is doing, what Bayer is doing, what Simon is doing, right? In every one of those cases, they chose a particular niche, and we're now promoting them globally, right? And just so you know, we're getting close to 2,000 students every single day joining our platform now, right? So if there's any of these different areas where you yourself are like, well, I want to have a niche, I want to be part of this, well, then the very first step is step in the door, get to know us. We want to get to know you as well. And then basically just start taking the right pathway, which is right for you, so that you can then basically be one of our partners as well. Because like this revolution that's taking place right now does not happen with a small group. It happens with a global group of people all coming together in all these different areas, right? So we have curriculum partners in health, like Joe Formosa, like Violetta in financial services, like Laura in talent dynamics, like Sophie in art dynamics, Peter on talent dynamics for luxury hospitality. Peter basically is using our wealth dynamics and talent dynamics programs for crew members of luxury yachts, right? Which is pretty mind-blowing. So that if you think about those people that have to stay, you know, below deck for like, you know, weeks at a time, they can all get on with each other. And we're also seeing city hosts all around the world joining up. So if you're in a particular city and you want to be our host in your city, we'll share with you how you can do that and be part of what we're doing to evolve and grow all around the world as well. Final thing I'll say is you saw that we've got all these languages now that would not be possible without all of our different language partners that have come on board and supported us in all these different languages. So if you think, wait, I want a country, I want a place where I want to be part of it as well, then again, as always, it starts as entry level, us getting to know you, and then building that relationship and then growing from there as well. And you can see all the different countries that we're now going to, but we'll never go to a particular language or country unless we know we have someone there who believes as much in the future of education and entrepreneurship as we do as well. So let me just come over for a moment, and any immediate questions, comments, or even just basically whether it's a question about what I covered earlier in Wealth Dynamics, just drop it in here at the moment. And if you don't have any comment at the moment or question, but you do want to share whatever's your biggest learning or a message for me, do post that in as well, which would be awesome. Michelle, let me come over to you for a moment, because you've been super busy building all of this out. Would you like to share with everyone what you're most excited by and anything I missed in my session so far?
Hey, Roger, no, this was a great session. You covered everything. And thank you so much for mentioning our partners at the moment. They've been working so hard to get this right. So it's an amazing journey that we've been on this whole year. So thank you very, very much for that. So shout out to all of you guys. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, I'm super excited about this because some of the guys on the call know that I'm like, love talent and wealth dynamics. It's like my favorite, like out of all time. It's something that I use for my teams. We use in our mentoring. And I've just been around this because that's where I started, Roger, where you just had the colors and the chakras and stuff. So for me, that was the amazing part. And I think the biggest journey now is that I'm actually wanting to help other partners grow this, through our journeys. So in having community partners in relevant cities, but then also looking for, specific curriculum translation partners. But we only have 3 a quarter in the curriculum and 3 a quarter in the translation. So it's kind of exciting because we're going to launch these new translations, the new curriculum, like Bear, Jan, Joseph, and Simon have done. And I think this is going to change the world, actually. But that's just me.
I know, me too. Me too. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. Right, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to finish with the whole reason we're doing what we're doing right now. Why this is so important. Why I'm going to keep on showing up every day, like over the next decade and couple of decades. The reason this is so important for what we're doing right now, and why I even asked you the question of what you were doing, not just even 20 but 30 years ago, because this whole system and what we're doing have everything to do with actually this question, which is where will you be in 30 years time? 30 years time. So 2022, right? 30 years from now is going to be 2052. 2052. That's a whole pack of cards. 2052. 30 years from now. And why this is so important is that there's already messages that came out 5 years ago, which was like singularity. This is like 30 years away. And now people think it's going to be even less. If you're following my YouTube channel, you know that basically there's now predictions from people like Elon Musk. It's going to happen this decade. And what is the singularity? The singularity was actually first mentioned by the person who wrote the book, The Singularity Is Now, and that's Ray Kurzweil. And Ray Kurzweil is written about in Time magazine. He's a futurist who actually works at Google now. 2045, the year man becomes immortal. This is effectively the speed of growth of artificial intelligence at a point at which we were going to hit the singularity, which is that moment at which robots and AI is more intelligent than we are as humans and will continue to make even more intelligent robots and AI than they are. And so that's a pretty frightening thought because we have no idea what's going to happen at that point. People like Elon Musk are talking about the fact that it could be the end of humanity, right? There's others who think it could be the end of all the world's challenges, right? But there's no question that there is this race between our consciousness and the consciousness of the machine, right? And the reason it's so important is because we are living in a world at the moment where our ability to raise our own consciousness is unparalleled. But so many people are going the opposite direction, where we're dropping our consciousness. The ones who are reaching higher levels of consciousness are using all the new technology and harnessing that technology. And this was all predicted. In fact, this all comes back down to this whole quote that actually changed the course of my life. This happened when I was an architecture student in Trinity College, Cambridge. And I thought I was going to be building buildings. And then I met this man, Buckminster Fuller. He was an architect, but he was also a futurist. And when I first met him, I had no idea what the word futurist even meant. But basically what it means is building the future, not just building buildings, right? And Buckminster Fuller created the geodesic dome, right? So he was very mathematical in the way he thought. He basically thought of humanity in the same way he thought of a geodesic dome. Like we are all connected. And he said that basically humanity is in a final exam. And it's a qualification exam, but where there is no failure, because the failure means there's no more exams after this, right? That's why I call it the final exam. And he said it's a touch and go race. And when I really understood what he meant by that race, right, what he was actually explaining is what he was saying was that technology allows you to solve all the world's problems, right? So for example, because technology is a distribution mechanism, which allows you to distribute more effectively. So for example, if you say there's poverty, that doesn't mean there isn't enough money for everyone. There's plenty of money. It's just not distributed effectively. Or if you say there's hunger, that's not because there isn't enough food. There's plenty of food. It's just not distributed effectively, right? So he said, look, there's enough technology in the world already. This was in the 1970s when he said this. There's enough technology in the world to solve all the world's problems, all of them. So why are they not solved? And he said, the reason they're not solved isn't because we don't have the technology. It's because we do have the technology, but we don't have the human consciousness, right? We're still at war. We're still basically like, thinking about ourselves and not everyone, right? And he said, so the real focus shouldn't be on the technology, because technology will keep on accelerating anyway. It has to be on our own consciousness. And he says it's a race, because technology keeps on accelerating with or without us. And so here's what's going to happen. Either we win the exam, we pass the exam by getting our consciousness up high enough, which is what the lighthouse is all about, getting it up high enough that we actually can harness that technology. And if we do that, we solve all the world's problems, right? We can see ourselves getting closer and closer for those who are in those fields, focusing those things. But the opposite can also happen, which is we fail the exam. And failing the exam is when our consciousness does not keep up with technology and may even go the wrong way. And as a result, technology will inevitably destroy us, which means there's no more exams after that. And that had such a chilling effect on me, the fact that I'm living at a time when we as a humanity are making that choice, that I dedicated my life not to building buildings, but building communities, right? To building learning, to actually learning consciousness, right? Learning our own awareness of ourselves and to evolve it. This is what this last two hours has been about. You've been just invested 2 hours of your life learning about the most important thing for you to learn about, which is yourself. And the most important thing now is how you then turn that into a lighthouse, how you light others by igniting yourself first. And if you start really realizing that's the only job you have to do here, because if you do that, that light on others means all your shadows fall behind you. And when you do that, then that means that all those other candles, as they get lit, then light up the world. It's really powerful if you start thinking about this. It costs nothing for a candle to light another candle. In fact, if anything, it just makes the whole room brighter. And most of us, we're so busy just holding ourselves down to our dark self, waiting for someone else to light us and wondering why it is that the light never goes on. So I want to say a huge thank you to all of you for coming and joining us here. I really do look forward to every one of you that are coming to us on the workshop. If for any reason you cannot make it, then we will have other opportunities, I hope, in the future. But I'm really looking forward to seeing all of you that took that very small $1 step forward and then actually are now ready to pass it forward. And just for you to know, that dollar we do not put in our pocket. We actually are giving that dollar to Buy One, Give One, which is our chosen charity. And that money goes to now educating on a educator in India. So just by doing that one step, you now have actually passed that on already without even knowing it. So thank you, everyone, so much. Great to see all the love. I'm now going to be signing off. We'll catch up with you all on our next session and appreciate all of the incredible comments. Thanks also to Michelle, to Yvette, and the whole team for making this all possible. We will see you all later. Bye.